Welcome to a special edition of the Star and D'Amico Show, breaking news edition. Shout out to our sponsors, cheapesttshirts.ca, McLean's Pub, your home of Star and D'Amico, October 22nd, littlebearonline.com, and Catherine Prince at Catherine with a K, Prince.ca. Maybe you want to move closer to the Bell Center because Lane Hutson has inked an 8-year extension with an AAV of $8.85 million. I'll tell you, before Marco jumps in, the first thing that went through my head, what an unbelievable deal. I have to believe this guy is all about the team more than he is about the mighty dollar. I think that's the initial reaction to this. Marco, let's put it to you right off the hop. What went through your mind when the news broke that Lane Hutson and the drama of will he, when will he, and he did, 8.85 AAV, what went through your mind?
I would say steal was the first thing that came through my mind. And again, I was always told that this was going to be around 9 million, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
I knew that the Canadiens had offered lower than 9 with deferral money last week, which is no longer applicable. So the Canadiens had to tweak their offer. But because they had to tweak their offer, the offer that the Canadiens made Lane Hutson, the most recent one, was actually higher than what he signed for. It was actually in the 9s. And he took a little less to mirror kind of the same offer that the Canadiens had made for him with deferral money. The only difference in this one here, and I was curious, was what does the structure look like? And then when I saw the contract structure, well, it's exactly what we've been talking about from the very beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Lane Hutson, even at $8.85 million, is going to make more money after tax than Luke Hughes or Jackson Lacombe in their respective deals, despite them making more in terms of average dollars on the deal.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in what happened. I mean, you and I were reacting to Elliot Freeman on our Sunday live show in the second intermission report about how this negotiation is going to go away. It's going to go into the shadows, essentially out of the public eye. And here we are now on this Monday afternoon reacting to this. Sportsnet's Eric Engels tweeted out just before 1 p.m. Monday afternoon that Lane Hutson was offered more, signed for less. He bought himself security, bought the Canadiens a bit more room to continue building a championship caliber team. He wants to win. He could have held out for more and could have waited for much longer. Not doing that says a lot about him. And I think he nailed it there because it was always interesting to me. You know, we'd watch Lane Hutson have to be dragged off the ice, can't get away from the ice, you know, and obviously you read into that, this guy's all about hockey first. So it was kind of surprising to me that the negotiations dragged on and Cortex and the whole team behind that firm was really, I don't know, playing hardball is the way to describe it, but it took some time to get it over the line. But at the end of the day, that's the strongest takeaway here. I think the core group of this team is realizing their potential and what they can do as an ensemble cast. And Lane Hutson has, air quote, fallen right into line. I mean, this guy just wants to win. I mean, is that the read that he realizes this core and he's a big part of this core, that if everybody is going to get paid, everyone's going to eat fine steaks and drink great wines, no doubt. But you can have both. And I think that's what's been accomplished here.
Lane Hutson did exactly what Kent Hughes was hoping he would do. Because if it were simply just up to his representation, they would still be at odds.
Right.
And so what ended up happening here is Lane Hutson stood up the same way that Jake Evans stood up. And this is the thing I wanted to see in these negotiations was, would he stand up and take control of them? And he did. And I think that's the key here is that we've seen, and I'm not going to start bashing agents for this. It's their job to seek out the best possible deal for their client. But at some point, the client needs to reassert what the parameters and the importance is. And the importance for Lane Hutson was an 8-year deal. I've said that since the get-go. It's if he could have signed for 16, he would have signed for 16. He wants to stay in Montreal. That was never going to change. It was always going to be an 8-year deal. That's what he wanted. You heard rumblings of maybe it's a 6-year deal, like we saw Darren Dreger. That was all positioning fed to him from Cortex. Simple as that. When you negotiate for a lower term, when the 8th year option is being taken off the table by the NHL in almost exactly 11 months, It's just a means of trying to get a higher AAV on the higher term for more value. Unfortunately, that did not work, and it's the reason why Elliot Friedman reported on Sunday or on Saturday night that they were going to keep this out of the media, because the Canadiens were not leaking this information. And I think this is what started weighing on Lane Hutson a little bit. I'm not saying it impacted his play, but it definitely weighed on him off the ice. And so the man stepped up, said what he wanted to do, got his 8 years, and gave the Canadiens the AAV that they were looking for.
Well, that was one thing I think, it's been consistent on, as you already pointed out, 8 years, 8 years, 8 years, 8 years, right? I mean, you've been beating me over the head with that line for what feels like weeks upon weeks, right? And if you recall back on Sunday during our live show, I asked you point blank, right? Like, wait a minute. Okay, so you can have Ryan Barnes, you can have Darren Ferris, you can have Sean Coffey, you can have the entire
Cortex team,
the powerhouse of Cortex behind you. But at the end of the day, Lane Hutson employs Cortex to represent him. And no doubt, I mean, you want to go to bat hard for your client. You want to play hardball. You want to maximize every dollar possible. And so it takes me back to one of my opening questions about, man, would I love to be a fly on the wall? I would love to know if Hutson said, hey, listen, let's just get this done. I agree. To me, 48's play wasn't affected by the ongoing negotiations, as we talked about on Sunday's show, right? Go back and listen to it. But at some point, does the player stand up and say, listen, we can do this? And does Cortex come back? No, Lane, I can get her over the line. I'll get you 11 million. I'll get you 11 million. And then, maybe Lane goes back and speaks to his family and says, you know what, 8.85, we're good to go. Let's rock. Let's put this behind us. Let's put it to bed, essentially.
I remember telling someone with knowledge of the negotiation that 8 times 8.75, 8 times 8.5 would seem to me the Goldilocks zone of where the Canadiens wanted to go with this.
Yeah.
And I was given a wink, in the sense that that's where the initial deferral offer would have been around. The Canadiens, because the deferral money, basically what deferral money did up until last week was you can give him 9.5 million or 9.25 million, say, because I think it was around there, in terms of average overall salary. But if you defer it, or defer a portion of it, it brought the salary cap down to under $9 million, which is what happened. That offer was refused.
Right.
It was off the table. The Canadiens and Cortex, as we know, paused the negotiations. Kent Hughes was seen with Ryan Barnes at the Detroit Red Wings game, which was reported by TVA Sports' Jonathan Bernier, who deserves credit for that especially. And my information that I received was progress was made in those conversations, and Lane had advanced to his representation that he wanted to get things done. That was the timeline that I was given. It was initially reported that a deal was imminent, which would usually assume that day. I got pushback saying it would probably, if it were to happen, be sometime this week. And that's exactly what we saw. So the thing that was most interesting to me was the structure, Sean, because we had been talking about this for a while. RCA, signing bonuses, deferral money. Well, one of those things was off the table in deferral money. So they went signing bonus heavy. And if you look at Lane Hutson's contract right now and the way that it broke down, it is $1 million in salary next season, $11 million in signing bonuses.
Ka-ching.
And rinse and repeat for the 2027-2028 season. The reason why those contracts are heavily front-loaded is because those young players have many expenses right out of their ELC. First of all, you got to pay your agency for just getting you that ka-ching that you just finished talking about. You have no liquidity because you were making $900,000 as a capped rookie salary with a little bit of capped signing performance bonus. So it's important for RFAs, and you can go and look at Cole Caulfield's contract. You can go and look at Slavkovsky's contract, Nick Suzuki's contract, all front-loaded for RFAs because those young players want to touch that money sooner. That's where the philosophical difference found itself when we were talking about deferred money, because you were pushing it to at the end of the contract. So we wouldn't see some of that money for 9 years. That's a lot to ask for a young man. So I understand his camp having a philosophical difference, but Lane Hutson made the bridge by being able to get his signing bonus money, but take less overall on the cap. And I think that's where you got the compromise that both sides were happy with.
At the end of the day, man, like to summarize, like this kid just wants to win, man. He wants to win. He's such a gamer. And Ken Hughes and Jeff Gordon have done, I think, a masterclass in getting the core group, the future, as they aim for a 25th championship in the storied history of the Montreal Canadiens. And I'll go back to the original point here. This core group knows that they're special. They believe that they're special, which is very important to believe that in yourself. And Lane knows his role, and he's going to be here for a long time. And you on this channel have broken down in a great way the salary cap, where it's going, how rapidly it's going to increase. And brother, the fact that he's in under $9 million to me, I mean, it's a masterpiece. It's a work of art that they were able to get this done. Like, to be dramatic, it's a work of art in my opinion.
Yeah, and there was a little bit more urgency. Kent Hughes said this during the press conference, but there was a little bit more urgency to get the deal done because of all the misinformation that was floating around online.
Yeah,
we saw Emily Kaplan report that there was a deal on the table for just under 9.5 million. That never happened. We saw reports by Darren Dreger saying that they were discussing a 6-year deal. That was not the desire of the client. So there were everything leaking left and right.
Right.
And that's why I eventually was just like, I have made my final report on this.
Yeah.
We will see if it comes to fruition. It did come to fruition, which is
it doesn't
great,
mean they weren't discussing a 6-year option. It doesn't mean they weren't. I'm sure it was on the table.
They put a bunch of they put a bunch of options on the table, but more often than not, you're discussing a 6-year because you're unsatisfied with the value you're getting on an 8-year, and you're using that as a trampoline to get 100%. The value that you're looking on the 8-year, and then the client comes in and says, my priority is winning an 8-year contract. The rest is details, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened here. The only thing I would add to that is the fact that Kent Hughes came out and said this is because Kent Hughes does not comment on contract negotiations. So it's very much a value that he would bring that comment up. At the same time, we're 48 hours removed from Elliot Friedman saying that they're going to take the discussions out of the media. That was a massive complaint that the Canadiens had in this negotiation, was that too much was leaking from the other side. Because I can tell you that the party line for the Montreal Canadiens was nothing was close, even up until yesterday. Mm-hmm. So that would allow you to understand that they do not want this stuff getting out. And there was pressure put on Kent Hughes to get this moving, but there was also pressure from Lane Hutson on his representation to get this done. He wanted it done before the end of the season. The fact that he even got into the season was something that did not make Lane Hutson happy. And that's the reason that they were able to come back together despite the deal falling through, to get a deal done nonetheless, and a pretty sweet one at that.
And I think that's the takeaway, because there were too many voices. Even, Arpon Basu of The Athletic, who covers the Montreal Canadiens, was on TSN 690 with Connor McKenna and yours truly talking about, and he used the word shocked once the season got off and the Canadiens open up their season in Toronto. He used the word shocked that maybe this deal would get done in season, right? So like, Arpon's pretty close. Arpon just doesn't throw bleep to the wall hoping it sticks. Like,
absolutely not
a rumor monger online, right? So like, when he said that to me, I was like, oh wow, okay, maybe this is going to drag on. But here we are Monday afternoon talking about signed, sealed, delivered.
Because this is why, and this was the problem, and this is and I kudos, because Arpon Basu is absolutely one of the best journalists
without
in
question.
the sport of hockey for me, and because the information changed so quickly.
Yeah. Because of Lane.
And it has. But not even because of Lane.
You don't think so? Really?
I was told last week, not the Friday that just passed, the one before that we should expect a Lane Hutson extension announcement last week. You remember that text message I sent you?
Yeah.
And then shit hit the wall, right?
Yeah.
And they couldn't come to an agreement, and talks broke down. Right. But everybody in that conversation seemed confident that something was going to come to fruition that weekend. That's not what ended up happening. Talks broke down. They said we're going to pause this. We'll come, we'll have a conversation another time. There was rekindling of a conversation. We already spoke about it over the weekend. And so that's what we got done. But at the time last week, there was a cold front between both parties, between the Monday and the Thursday, And so a lot of the information that we were getting was they're not close. It's not happening. They're not talking. And
Yeah.
as everyone says in hockey, it takes one phone call. Well, the phone call was from Lane Hutson.
Well, remember Pierre LeBrun was like, "Oh man, it's gotten so heated. They need to take a break. Like a soured relationship, time apart will do us good, and we'll see if we can come back together."
And because that was put out, it was a bad look, and it forced both parties to get back to the table because it looked terrible. It looked terrible. You are an agency, and this is dragging out like this, and you're seeing this being played out in the media for a guy that has said time and time and time and time and time again that all he wants to do is stay in Montreal and play hockey and win here.
Exactly.
And it's being made to drag out as if this is some sort of Mitch Marner existential conversation between the organization and the player. No. And it made it look so terrible because everyone involved in reporting on this knew exactly where all this information was being leaked from.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made it look bad. And eventually they were brought back to the table. They got it done because if this dragged on, the amount of rhetoric that would come from this would be akin to the summer when PK Subban went to arbitration. You remember that?
Of course.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Twitter isn't what it is today as it was in I believe it was 2015,
Yeah.
or 2014, sorry.
14,
but oh my God. Oh my God. That was nuclear back then. Could you imagine what it would look like as we got onto the season and had this continued? It would have been a disaster. And I totally understand both parties feeling re-energized to get something done.
Yeah. So let's add another layer to this, right? Like if you and I think most people watching, listening to us agree that Montreal Canadiens did what the Toronto Blue Jays couldn't do in game one, and that's hit a grand slam. That's what management did here. That's what Lane Hutson's management team did. They found common ground in 8 years, 8.85 million AAV. And the other layer to this is if you want to be a part of this, you more or less have to fall in line. And who's on deck? Zach Bolduc, who's on 3 goals in 3 games. Ivan Demidov, who has bought in, who's playing some good hockey. Love the back-checking effort, mixing it up Saturday night in Chicago as the Canadiens have won back-to-back and took 4 out of 6 ahead of the home opener in Seattle tomorrow night. So, I mean, this puts pressure. This puts pressure on these young men and their management saying, hey, listen, there's a pattern of consistency here. Look at the contracts, the AAVs of Nick Suzuki, of Cole Caulfield, of Lane Hutson, of Juraj Slafkovsky. You want to be a part of this? I might even throw Mike Masterton into this. You want to be a veteran? You want to be a part of this? I mean, yeah, you'll make bank, but you're not breaking records here. So let's walk through what this might mean for those 2 guys in particular. Let's focus on Bolduc and let's focus on Demidov here because they're next.
Well, yeah, Bolduc, I think to a lesser degree. I mean, obviously he's been fantastic to start the season, but
for sure,
again, you need to apples in this case. Obviously, like let the man cook, right? Like Pat Brisson is his agent at CAA.
Yeah,
Pat Brisson has no problem, like we saw with Cole Caulfield, waiting to the end of the season having a conversation, or waiting to the last possible second, like Luke Hughes and signing him, or Jackson Lacombe a year early. It all depends on the context, right? And I think if you're the Montreal Canadiens negotiating now with Zachary Bolduc before you see, first couple of games of the season is fine. You get hype I'm sure fans are excited, and that's totally okay. But you got to wait 30, 40 games to see exactly what you really have in him and what kind of a player he is. Make an assessment of how he looks like in your system outside of outside of Chris Boucher's analytics model. You want to see what he does on the ice, and if the numbers gel with the eye test, up to date, absolutely fantastic. And I think that if he continues this pace, I would be shocked that the Canadiens wouldn't want to have a conversation earlier than the end of the season. But obviously, again, if you're Pat Brisson and you're Zachary Bolduc, you want to see how far this can go in terms of how long the success can last, because the better he does, the more leverage they get. Right? Because unlike Lane Hutson, Zachary Bolduc would be eligible, if I'm not mistaken, 4 offer sheets this summer. And so that kind of changes the dynamic. I will double check that fact for you as we're talking about it. When it comes to Ivan Demidov, and, obviously this sends a message to him and agent Dan Milstein that, well, if Lane Hutson's going to play ball, you got to play ball.
Well,
and that's going to be a very
takeaway,
interesting thing. That's going to be a very interesting thing to me, specifically because when you look at some of the contracts, the clients he signed, Nikita Kucherov signed a 3-year bridge in Tampa before signing the massive deal that he did, right? But Andrei Vasilevsky cashed in right out of his ELC, if I'm not mistaken, signed that 8-year deal at $9.5 million. So Mikhail Sergachev took a bridge and then signed that long-term contract. Like it all depends on what the client wants to do again. And I think this is where seeing Lane Hutson go through what he did, Ivan Demidov probably won't want to go through the same thing, right?
No.
The Canadiens, and if I understand the Canadiens, if I know the Canadiens, they'll want Demidov on an 8-year contract. And that, ladies and gentlemen, expires as an option as of September 16th, 2026. So they'll have between July 1st and September 16th to get a deal done if they want an 8-year deal, which I know the Canadiens are going to want to get done because it gives them fiscal visibility for 9 years down the line, which is such a huge thing for them because it'll dictate what kind of money they can go and use to spend. The Canadiens don't trade for and sign Noah Dobson to the contract that he has without having Caulfield, Suzuki, Gooley, and Slavkovsky signed for 6+ years, right? That you need that kind of assurance before you can go out and try to fish for the big fish. And so that's what they want.
Second year in a row, the Montreal Canadiens are the youngest team in the National Hockey League. They broke a record a year ago by qualifying for the playoffs as the youngest team. They're younger again. And yeah, the point that's driven home for me is Hutson wants to win. This core group is as tight as a team. Since I've been in the media, since 2001, when I moved from CJAD to Team 990, now TSN, I've never seen a team as tight. I haven't seen a team deep with forwards, as I've mentioned, what feels like 25 years. The heartbeat, the raison d'etre for the Montreal Canadiens has been the man between the pipes. And now for what feels like a new generation, there is a depth of talent that people of our age, probably more my age, I'm 100 years older than D'Amico, but I'm happy for the fans that this is over. I'm happy for the fans that they get to cheer for stars and talent up front and on the back end. And tip of the cap to Ken Hughes, man. The guy's batting average it's not 1,000, but it's like better than Ted Williams right now during his time as general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. Your final takeaway on this whole thing, Marco?
If I'm Canadiens fans, I don't know of a franchise in better shape to compete as they're rising right now than the Montreal Canadiens. I really like what they're doing in Utah, for example, but I have to see what Logan Cooley signs for before I give them my check mark. You look at teams that have rebuilt well. Chicago has done a really good job of signing some very valuable contracts. It will all depend on what Connor Bedard signs for, in my honest opinion, and Sam Rinzel signs for. Once those guys sign, you'll kind of know where they're sitting in their rebuild. I feel like right now, today, the Canadiens are probably the best constructed up-and-coming team in the NHL, and this cemented it.
Let's go. It's done. Now we move on to the Canadiens' win-loss record and what's going on. And make sure you check out our video tomorrow on game day with the Habs home opener. I don't know if you saw my tweet, but the Montreal Canadiens have been rehearsing their home opener and they're ready to go. They're about 2 minutes over the scheduled time. But as I was told by someone very close to what's going on there, they're more than happy. More than happy. You can blame Chicago and Detroit because the Blackhawks and the Red Wings, years ago were exaggerating their ceremonies. And the NHL said, enough with this. You guys want to go over the allotted time? You're going to pay $10,000 a minute as a fine. So we'll see how the fans react. Money well spent. As I was told, they're happy to spend the $20K. But, we'll see what happens with the fans. We'll see what happens with the fans.
I was iffy that Seattle was the team that they were going to play with to start the preseason, to start the season at home.
Yeah.
They could play against the Milwaukee Admirals tomorrow for all I care. The roof is coming off that building the moment Lane Hutson is announced to the crowd.
Let's go. I love the reaction, by the way, at his whole team mobbed him in the corner and celebrating that this is over. I mean, I stress the point, man. These guys, they're forming a brotherhood if they haven't already. I mean, look at when they left the space for Christian Dvorak. on the little dip that they do. They left a space for
Power of
Devo.
friendship.
You got it, brother. Yeah.
But I think that, and I think we'll just leave on this point, but Kent Hughes has now succeeded in creating a culture of leaving money on the table for the next guy. And the fact that that kind of thing is celebrated amongst the boys further reinforces that culture. And I feel like that culture will be cyclical to the point where when I think when Nick Suzuki's contract comes to an end at the end of his 8-year deal and it's his time to negotiate a contract, he's not going to look to blow the roof off the joint in terms of making bank. He'll continue that cycle, just like Patrice Bergeron did it in his time.
Well said. Great point. Marco D'Amico on the Star and D'Amico show, live on YouTube, special edition. Thanks so much for tuning in. It was great to be able to bring this to you. It's great that it's over with now, and to look forward to the Canadiens. Yeah, no kidding. The Canadiens 4-game homestand. I saw at one point D'Amico was waving the white flag on Twitter. He's like, I'm done. Waiting for this to be over. So it's Seattle on Tuesday. And the New York Rangers on Saturday, the Sabres on Monday, and yes, Nashville. That came to mind. Nashville on Thursday. There's your 4 games, and we'll be here to cover every single one of them. Like and subscribe as always. Thanks to our sponsors, cheapesttshirts.ca, McLean's Pub. Come see us live October 22nd. And yeah, you might want to move closer to the Bell Center. Catherine Prince with Remax Platine has your hookup. And a big shout out to our friends at Little Bear on St. Catherine, downtown across from Westmount Square. littlebearonline.com. For Marco D'Amico, I'm Sean Starr. Thank you so much for being a part of this special edition of the program. And to stay tuned tomorrow, we have an interesting topic on trendsetters. Maybe the Canadiens will be the trend setter as it relates to a trade market. So hold on to your hat for that. We'll see you Wednesday to recap the Canadiens and Kraken and the home opener. Thanks, Marco.
Always a pleasure, guys.